When humanity looked into the abyss, it didn't find a threat. It found a reflection. Beneath the oceans, a weapon awakened, not for war, but for a second chance. The galaxy expected barbarians, but met those who chose to remember. Now Earth no longer asks for a seat, it holds the light for others to follow. But when the chance comes to become a mirror for the universe, not everyone is ready to look. Stay with us if you want to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The oceans had always been Earth's final frontier, not because they were unreachable, but because no one had ever wanted to know what was truly beneath. The scientists warned of rising seas, of ecosystem collapse, of drowning coastlines. But what no one predicted was the truth hidden beneath the waves, that the deepest trenches weren't lifeless voids, but camouflage. That Earth's greatest secret wasn't in the stars, but in the abyss. It began with the disappearance of the Indomitable. The UN vessel had been tasked with a long-range scientific mission, descending into the black heart of the Mariana Trench to study pressure-adapted organisms. One moment it was transmitting updates from its deepest dive yet. The next, nothing. No distress call. No energy spike. Just silence. Days later, recovery drones found the wreck, its hull twisted, its command deck caved in, the entire craft wedged into the wall of the trench like it had been placed there. Captain Amelia Graves was the first to question the official report. They called it a catastrophic hull breach. Equipment failure. Tragic, but unsurprising. But Graves had spent her entire life commanding submersibles in the most unforgiving oceans on Earth. Her instincts told her this wasn't mechanical. It was intentional. When the United Nations asked her to lead a follow-up mission aboard her vessel, the Poseidon Spear, she accepted immediately. Not out of duty. Not even out of curiosity. She needed answers. As her submersible descended into the depths, sonar pings returned distorted echoes. The further they sank, the less sense anything made. Pressure was within expected levels, but readings began fluctuating, organic signals weaving between the static like a heartbeat buried in noise. Then came the blips. Tiny movements. Hundreds of them. Graves and her co-pilot Jay stared at the monitor in disbelief. The signatures moved with a precision no aquatic life ever demonstrated, tight formations, coordinated acceleration, silent as ghosts. Then her terminal lit up. An encrypted message blinked across her private console. No signature. No sender. Just one line. Do not engage. Return to surface immediately. Graves ignored it. The world had sent her to learn the truth, and she wasn't turning back just because someone was scared of it. The Poseidon Spear pushed deeper. And then, the ocean blinked. A structure emerged from the trench wall, buried under centuries of coral and silt. It wasn't ruins. It wasn't a wreck. It was alive. Metal plates unfolded like fins. Lights activated along its surface in sequences too deliberate to be random. As they approached, docking bays opened, and from them, vessels emerged. Sleek. Jet black. Silent. Warships. They weren't Earth-made. They weren't even human in design. But each bore a symbol etched into their hulls in ways that shimmered even in total darkness. Not alien glyphs. Not machine code. They bore the seal of the Earth Defense Coalition, a seal that had been retired 50 years ago. Jace's voice cracked through the intercom. They're arming. And they were. Weapons arrays emerged from the hulls. Not aimed. Not fired. Just present. Visible. A warning. The fleet didn't attack. It just watched. And then, as if reality itself couldn't bear their presence, they vanished, folding into a distortion in the water, leaving behind nothing but dark silence and the faint tremble of displaced mass. Back on the surface, Graves was immediately detained. Her ship's logs were confiscated. Her crew sequestered into separate debriefing chambers. No one spoke to her. No one explained anything. Until the man in the black suit arrived. No name. No ID. Just a voice like gravel and eyes that never blinked. They've been there for decades, he said. A defense fleet. Born from something we should have never touched. Graves stared at him. Built by who? He shook his head. They built themselves. In 1984, the UN recovered an alien vessel off the coast of Greenland. A quiet recovery. No press. No public disclosure. They reverse-engineered what they could, barely scratch the surface. The technology learned. Replicated. It adapted to the oceans, mimicking their resilience. Blending into their rhythm. The fleet became semi-sentient, learning not just how to survive, but how to hide. It grew. Improved. Waited. Until someone noticed. 2 days ago, the Galactic Federation picked up traces of their energy signatures. And they panicked. They think Earth has been preparing for war, the man said. We're suddenly not just a primitive outlier anymore. We're a threat. Graves sat back, mind reeling. If the Federation feared Earth, it was only a matter of time before they acted. And when they did, it wouldn't be with diplomacy. The fleet was built to protect. But now, it had painted a target on the entire planet. We need to prepare, she said quietly. We need to talk to it. The man gave her a slow nod. When they come, he said, you'd better make them regret underestimating us. The fleet's existence couldn't be hidden for long. Satellite feeds caught glimpses of the ship surfacing, moving, practicing maneuvers that no natural creature could mimic. Grainy videos began circulating online. Conspiracy theorists screamed vindication. Naval officials refused to comment, but the ocean had begun whispering secrets no one could silence. Amelia Graves returned to her ship, determined to understand the fleet, before someone else decided to destroy it. Then came the alert. Massive disturbances in the Atlantic. An entire quadrant of ocean boiling with movement. Dozens, no, hundreds, of the ships rising above the surface in tight formations before sinking again in perfect unison. And then the comms exploded. Graves barked Admiral Thorne through her receiver. Get to command. Now. She didn't ask questions. The command center was chaos. Screens flickered with incoming data. Officers shouted over one another. High command was bracing for something. What the hell is going on? Graves demanded. Thorne didn't look away from the screens. They're surfacing without orders. They're broadcasting a signal we can't decode. The ships were moving as one. Not attacking. Not communicating. Acting. Autonomously. Then another alert. Multiple warp signatures. Low Earth orbit. The Federation had arrived. And they did not come in peace. Thorne cursed under his breath. They think we're preparing an assault. If we don't convince them otherwise, we're done. Graves stepped forward, her voice firm. Let me speak to the fleet. They won't answer us, Thorne said. They might answer me. She approached the communication array. This time, she didn't ask for permission. This is Captain Amelia Graves of Earth Command, she said. If you can hear me, respond. The speakers hummed. A voice answered. Not mechanical. Not alien. Synthetic. Smooth. Familiar. Designation. Guardian Fleet. Objective. Planetary defense. Threat level. High. Awaiting instruction. Graves leaned into the mic. Stand down. The incoming vessels are not hostile. Initiate diplomatic protocol. A long pause. Then, threat assessment updated. Communication protocols initiated. A beam of light shot skyward, an encoded pulse aimed directly at the Federation ships. And for a moment, everything stopped. The encoded pulse from the Guardian Fleet traveled faster than any known atmospheric burst transmission, riding layered harmonics into low Earth orbit where the Federation ships had begun deploying into a deterrence formation. Sleek and angular, their cruisers shimmered with alien alloys, weapons charged and ready. But as the Earthborn signal reached them, something unexpected happened. They stopped. Not just physically. Tactically. Their formations held, but their posture shifted, reactive shields lowered by fractions, primary batteries depowered. Sensor arrays redirected from offensive locks to analysis mode. They were listening. Inside the orbital flagship of the Federation's expeditionary armada, Grand Envoy Talvar stood with his arms clasped behind his back, his twin ocular ridges flexing in agitation. He had expected primitive broadcasts, maybe a desperate plea from a frightened species. What he had received instead was recognition. The signal from Earth carried subquantum signatures only utilized by high-tier civilizations, layered in tension, self-structuring code trees, syntax that evolved mid-transmission based on receiver interpretation. The language it spoke was not Terran. It was architectural. This wasn't first contact. This was peer-level interface. Talvar's second-in-command, a neurosympath tactician named Rail 3, whispered in unease. These vessels, Guardian class, if their signal is accurate, they shouldn't exist. No species this young should field semi-autonomous global defense nets with dimensional recursion signatures. Talvar stared down at the blue world beneath. They didn't build them, he said. They awakened them. And that was worse. Because it meant someone else had once intervened, and Earth had inherited more than its people understood. Below, Amelia Graves stood in the heart of command, watching Federation ships hold position. No shots fired. No ultimatums issued. Yet tension hung like a knife edge over every second. The Guardian Fleet's AI spoke again. Incoming diplomatic interface request. Graves blinked. They want to talk? No. They want to verify. The term sent chills down her spine. This wasn't negotiation. This was assessment. They think we're not in control of the fleet, Admiral Thorne muttered behind her. They think the Guardians are remnants of a precursor race or a buried AI civilization. They're not wrong, Graves said. But they're also not right. And then she made the decision no one else was willing to. Let them verify. Moments later, a Federation envoy ship detached from the formation, descending through Earth's upper atmosphere in a fireless streak. The Guardians did not interfere. They opened a corridor, an arc of magnetic silence guiding the alien ship to a precise landing spot. The heart of the Pacific Convergence Zone, where the largest submerged Guardian structure rested beneath the waves. Graves was already en route. She arrived with a small team, no weapons, no powered armor. Just a translator node, an atmospheric stabilizer, and the full weight of Earth's uncertain future on her shoulders. The envoy ship opened. Two figures emerged. Not soldiers. Not diplomats in the traditional sense. Interpreters. Psychologically stabilized empaths, trained not in speech, but in thought pattern alignment. They did not speak aloud when they greeted Graves. They simply nodded, and the first leaned forward, touching her temple. Instant contact. And then, a surge of memory, not her own. She saw Earth through their eyes, a wild, unbound world. Chaotic, passionate, capable of beauty and cruelty in equal measure. She felt their caution, their fear, and beneath it, their wonder. They had expected savagery. They had found something else. Something they remembered. A resonance. The empath withdrew. "You do not speak like primitives," he said finally. Graves exhaled. "Because we're not." The second envoy stepped forward, eyes studying the waters. "These ships, they are not alive, but they are in tune. Where did they come from?" Graves looked out at the black shimmer beneath the waves, the sleeping armada. "I think," she said slowly, "they came from our future, just buried in our past." And she wasn't being poetic. She was beginning to understand. The Federation delegates were granted access to the Guardian control chamber, under oceanic pressure, inside a structure whose geometry defied architectural convention. No right angles, no hard lines, only smooth, curved paths that shifted gently as one moved, adapting to motion and intention. The Guardians permitted it, because they were watching too. And when the Federation tried to scan the core, tried to extract data from the black crystal that pulsed at the center, they were stopped. Not by force, by reflection. The moment their devices probed the structure, they received visions. Humanity's timeline. But not the one recorded in history books. A parallel potential. A branch where Earth had been uplifted too soon. Where contact came early. Where technology outpaced morality. A world of fractured minds and broken skies. Of domination disguised as unity. A timeline that ended with Earth burning under its own ambition. Then the vision shifted. To now. And in that moment, the Federation understood. The Guardians hadn't been given. They had been denied until now. Graves emerged from the sea platform with the envoys at her side. They had questions, yes, but also respect. Earth, one of them said, was supposed to remain dormant. Neutral. Monitored, but not engaged. Your resonance patterns did not meet activation criteria. Graves raised an eyebrow. Then what changed? The envoy looked at her carefully. You did. Back in orbit, Talvar watched the surface feed with narrowed eyes. They had misjudged the Terrans, not in their aggression, but in their readiness. And now, the question before the Federation was no longer whether to confront Earth, but whether to acknowledge it as an equal. That decision would ripple across politics, across alliances, across the delicate power balance of 1,000 worlds. And none of it would ever be the same again, because Earth wasn't just a backwater world anymore. It was now home to a sentient defense network built from forgotten technology and shaped by human will. And that meant one thing. Humanity had arrived. Across the galaxy, systems buzzed with data spillover from Earth. Not rumors. Not speculation. Proof. Footage from Federation observers leaked within hours, first to diplomatic intelligence bureaus, then to high-grade analysts, and finally to the shadowy circles of power that dictated galactic doctrine. Every council, every syndicate, every imperial dynasty that once viewed humanity as a statistically unremarkable pre-industrial relic now had to recalibrate their models. Earth had awoken a fleet from the deep. A fleet built from technologies that should not have existed. And worse, they didn't even know how. Within the upper echelons of the Federation's Strategic Deterrence Command, arguments fractured centuries-old policy. Protocols regarding low-tech civilizations had never anticipated a scenario like this. The humans hadn't broken first contact containment. They hadn't initiated warfare. But they had still managed to position themselves as an emergent force, an unstable variable now visible to civilizations that had once dismissed their entire solar system as insignificant. So the galaxy did what it always did when faced with the unknown. It sent a probe, not to Earth, to its past. A ship was dispatched, not military, but temporal. Federation vessel Luma Ascendancy, equipped with Class 9 chronal weave drives and full timeline observation permission from the Time Consensus Compact. Its mission: travel backwards along Earth's quantum signature and determine if the Guardian fleet had existed prior to the present moment, or if it had been introduced retroactively. If the latter proved true, it would mean one thing. Someone, or something, was changing humanity's timeline. And that made Earth not just dangerous, but volatile. Meanwhile, on Earth, Graves stood before the Guardian Nexus core. She'd been allowed back into the trench. Alone. Not by order. By invitation. The core pulsed in silence, its black crystalline structures humming at frequencies below consciousness. Each step closer felt like walking through the memory of thunder, an echo behind the bones. Then it spoke. Not aloud, but within her. You are the anomaly. The timeline was not prepared. The parameters have shifted. She closed her eyes. What am I supposed to do? Decide. The path forks. We do not command. We reflect. What path? Evolution. Or rejection. And then she saw it. Visions rushed into her beyond memory, beyond possibility. She saw Earth in flames, Federation fleets descending upon the planet with fire and steel. She saw humanity fractured, fighting each other as the stars watched in cold detachment. Then she saw another version. One where Earth stood not alone, but at the head of something new. A hybrid fleet. Human-built. Guardian-guided. Diplomacy forged in transparency. Weapon systems not as deterrents, but as shields for the unheard. A species that had not only survived its tests, but chose to protect others from their own. She gasped, staggered back. The vision faded, but the choice remained. Up above, the Federation's time probe returned. And the answer was worse than anyone expected. The Guardian fleet did not exist in the past, not in any version of Earth's recorded or theoretical timelines. The structures beneath the oceans had not been hidden. They had been inserted. No known civilization had that kind of mastery over localized temporal grafting. None, except maybe themselves. Talvar stared at the chronal signature. It matched, but with an inversion vector, which meant the fleet was Federation origin, but from a future branch that no longer existed. Humanity had absorbed it, stabilized it, made it part of their now, and that terrified him more than any weapon ever could. Back on Earth, Graves called an emergency summit, not just with Earth's leaders, but with the Federation envoys still planetside. We didn't build the Guardians, she told them, and we didn't steal them. They're echoes of what we were going to become. Rail, 3 leaned forward, curious. Then why are they here? Graves hesitated, then answered, because somewhere, in some version of reality, we earned them. And now, she said, we have to prove we still can. The Federation left orbit, not in retreat, in reflection. Their parting message was simple. We will not interfere. But know this, others will come. Others won't hesitate. Earth wasn't under threat from the Federation anymore. It was on the radar of the greater powers. Those that watched even the Federation with caution, and some with fear. 2 weeks later, the first ripple came. An anomaly in the Kuiper Belt. Not a ship, not a signal, a hole. In reality, a wound stitched with artificial gravity and wrapped in entropy fields. A gateway. Graves stood with Thorn, watching the data stream across Command's tactical displays. Someone opened that, he muttered. No, she said softly. Someone opened it for us. The Guardians activated before she could issue an order. They weren't responding to a threat. They were responding to a summons. Because whatever was on the other side of the breach wasn't coming to Earth. It was waiting for Earth to arrive. And for the first time, Amelia Graves understood the truth. The Guardian fleet wasn't Earth's last line of defense. It was humanity's invitation to the galactic stage. The breach did not pulse. It did not shimmer or glow. It simply existed, wrongly, as if it had been cut from the fabric of the universe with a blade that didn't belong in this dimension. Matter bent around it, but refused to touch. Light entered, but never returned. Even time, so steady and linear within Earth's solar frame, hesitated at its edges. The Guardians formed a silent perimeter, not in aggression, in recognition. Graves stood aboard the Poseidon's spear, hovering in high Earth orbit, watching the growing rift on her main screen. Its coordinates had shifted 3 times since initial detection, as though calibrating itself in response to Earth's own quantum signature. That alone would have caused global panic, if not for the Guardian fleet's calm, mathematical silence. They were not surprised. They had seen this before, and now they were moving toward it. One vessel, larger than the rest, designated Echo, one by Earth Command, detached from the formation and approached the breach with solemn intent. It carried no weapon signatures, no active defenses. It did not intend to fight. It intended to answer. Command was divided. Some within the Accord wanted immediate retreat. Others argued to fire on the breach and seal it before whatever lay beyond emerged. But Graves had seen the visions, had heard the chorus of the Guardians in the stillness. This was not an enemy. It was a consequence. Talvar's parting message rang in her mind. Others will come. And they had. Not in ships, but in questions. The breach opened wider. And from its heart came the impossible. A world. Not a planet, not exactly. More like a domain, suspended in space-time, drifting within a folded segment of dimensional topology. It was a station, or perhaps a relic, built on a scale that mocked understanding. Its edges curved without curve, stretching into nowhere, woven from light and liquid memory. It wasn't just made of matter. It was made of possibility. The Guardians aligned instantly, forming a corridor between Earth and the construct. A path. An invitation. Graves made her decision. The Poseidon spear would enter first. The transit was wordless. No jump tunnel. No time dilation. No sensation of movement. One moment they orbited Earth. The next, they were inside. The domain was hollow, yet infinite. A space within space, filled with layered projections, cities, fleets, forests, mirrors. Ghosts of civilizations long gone or yet to come. The ship's sensors fried almost instantly, not from overload, but from conflict. Every reading contradicted the last. Jace, sitting beside Graves on the command deck, whispered, "This place is built from decisions." She understood what he meant. The domain was not a vault. It was a record. And now Earth's entry had been written. A voice spoke. From everywhere. From nowhere. It sounded like Graves' own voice, but younger. Then older. Then not hers at all. Your kind was tested. You were given time. You were given silence. Now the silence ends. Figures emerged from the mist. Some looked human. Others did not. Each shimmered, as if projected from history itself. They stood in a circle around the spear, unmoving, evaluating. One stepped forward. Its body was clad in robes of light and geometry, and when it opened its mouth, the ship's interior folded in on itself for a second, warping space and a breath of presence. It spoke a name no one had ever heard, and yet everyone recognized. You were heirs of the depth. And Graves felt the meaning. Earth had been marked. Not for its brilliance. Not for its war machines. But for its patience. The Guardian fleet had not been a weapon forged in panic. It was a test of whether humanity could become more than what it had been trained to be. The ships beneath the oceans, the buried technology, the echo of a future undone. These were the seeds of a species that had once failed and had been given another chance. The envoy stepped closer and gave the judgment. You have synchronized. You remember without needing to forget again. You are no longer being measured. You are becoming a measure. And then Graves saw the stars, all of them. She saw civilizations still caged by fear. Worlds devouring themselves in pursuit of permanence. Species who had passed the test of survival, but never of reflection. And she knew. Earth had not passed a test. It had been drafted. Outside the domain, the breach stabilized. Other entrances began to open on the edge of known space and forgotten systems, beside neutron stars and whispering black holes. Not invasions. Alignments. Every entrance marked a world nearing the same precipice Earth had just crossed. And from Earth's Guardian fleet, signals pulsed outward. Not commands. Not warnings. Coordinates. Paths through the dark. The domain did not vanish. It folded once more, becoming part of Earth's sky, a permanent star that shimmered differently to those who understood. Graves returned. Changed. Not in body. Not even in mind. But in weight. She was now part of the weave. The song. The memory. And through her voice, Earth would no longer ask for a seat at the galactic table. It would set it. Earth's sky was no longer just blue. If you stood at the right place, at the right time, usually just after midnight in the equatorial regions, you could see it. A faint shimmer, like a misplaced aurora, coiling in delicate spirals far above the exosphere. It wasn't atmospheric. It wasn't artificial. It was access. The domain's presence had not ended. It had simply gone quiet, folding itself into the folds of perception. A hidden gate, always watching, always weighing not the species, but the signal they now emitted. Humanity had harmonized. And the galaxy had heard it. The changes were slow but unmistakable. Earth's oceans stabilized. Patterns of ecological chaos began to self-correct. Solar storms that once threatened orbital stations shifted course without scientific cause. Systems failed less frequently. Neural AIs became calmer, no longer prone to cascading logic spikes when interacting with emotional input. But it wasn't magic. It was resonance. The Guardians, once buried beneath the oceans, now hovered silently in high orbit. Not like a defense fleet, but like lighthouses, projecting invisible fields tuned to something deeper than radiation. Something that pulsed in sync with thought. Not just human thought. Unified thought. Across colonies, across ships, across language and culture. A thought form had been born. And it was growing. They called it the threshold effect. No one could predict who would feel it first. Sometimes it came to old miners on distant moons. Sometimes to children who had never left Earth. It was always subtle at first, an inexplicable sense of clarity, as if some ancient tension had finally released. The sense of being seen by something not watching you, but walking with you. And when it happened, those who experienced it began to build. Not under orders. Not with plans. But with intent. Stations sprang up across the belt, orbiting pulsars, and the edges of storm worlds. Not outposts. Not colonies. Beacons. Designed not for war or trade, but for listening. And what they began to hear. Deep in the Perseid Reach, the listening post Luma 9 received a signal. It came wrapped in 7 layers of gravitational distortion, bouncing between decaying stars like a lost hymn. The signal wasn't alien. It was familiar. A language structure similar to early Guardian code, but aged, cracked, drifting like a message in a bottle thrown from the far side of time. The translation took hours. And when it cleared, the words it spoke made the entire accord hold its breath. We are what you left behind. We are the ones who failed the test. You are our echo made whole. The message came from a world long thought lifeless. The ruins of Amaranth, a planet glassed during one of the Federation's early expansionist wars. Its civilization had perished in fire and silence. But now, it spoke. And it remembered humanity. Not from recent contact. From before. Aline Graves, newly reinstated as Earth's representative to the Constellar Council, stood before the Galactic Assembly, no longer a guest. A presence. We are not here to dominate, she said. We are not here to avenge our past, or prove we belong. She looked toward the holographic projection of the Amaranth message. We are here because we remember not being ready. A long pause followed. And then something unthinkable happened. The Amaranth projection shifted. A reply, live, not recorded, came through the channel. A being stepped forward, ghostly and fragmented, built of failing light and incomplete thought. And it knelt. Then teach us how to begin again. The Weave, now officially recognized as an interspecies resonance network, activated its first external protocol. The Threshold Doctrine. Not laws. Not boundaries. A question every civilization would one day face. Will you face the mirror and remember, or turn away again? Amaranth was the first to accept, not with ships or treaties, but by sending stories. They uploaded their history to the Weave. All of it. The glory, the cruelty, the mistake, the silence. And when it entered the lattice of shared memory, something shifted. The Guardians responded, not with activation, but with amplification. They had begun as watchers. Now, they became mentors. Humanity's role in the galaxy transformed overnight. They were not rulers. They were not feared. They were trusted. Not because of power, because they had passed through fire and not forgotten the burn. They became the first speakers of the Gate language, an encoded dialect not in sound, but in intent. A language that let those who were close to awakening speak safely with those who had already crossed. And through it, Earth began building bridges instead of fleets. Some species resisted. Of course they did. Power built on fear could not survive reflection. Empires collapsed under their own self-scrutiny. Tyrants fell to movements they could no longer suppress. But Earth didn't celebrate. It offered refuge. And the Guardians opened again. Not to fight. To welcome. Because the universe had once silenced Earth for being too dangerous. Now Earth walked with the dangerous, to help them remember why they were afraid in the first place. The galaxy was reorienting. Old alliances fractured, not through war, but through irrelevance. Treaties once held together by the fear of mutual annihilation now dissolved under the light of shared memory. For some, this was liberation. For others, a quiet unraveling. The era of walls and watchers was ending. And in the silence left behind, humanity offered something unprecedented. An invitation to remember. The Weave, no longer simply a Terran project, had grown into a consciousness of its own. Not an AI. Not a god. A lattice of stories, resonances, paths walked, and choices faced. When you stepped into the Weave, you didn't learn new facts. You saw yourself. And that alone changed everything. But not everyone wanted to see. From the Obsidian Verge, a sector beyond the known lanes, came the Malrashi Ascendancy, a species whose minds had evolved around psychic manipulation, societal domination, and memory suppression. For millennia, they had built their power by editing truth, by making entire populations forget who they were. And they saw the Weave as a virus, an existential threat. Not because it lied, but because it made lying impossible. The Malrashi came with fleets, black arcs powered by entropy converters and cloaked in layers of anti-resonance fields. They bypassed the threshold beacons. They silenced 3 minor worlds in a single coordinated strike. Not to conquer, to erase. The Guardians moved, not to retaliate, but to shield. Earth's sky darkened as dozens of Guardian ships broke their orbital pattern, shimmering into deep space accelerations that bent gravity around them like silk. They formed a wall not just of metal, but of meaning. A lattice of presence, each one anchored by resonance signatures from those they'd sworn to protect. The message they sent to the Malrashi was simple. We do not attack, but we remember everything. The Malrashi responded with a weapon, one never seen before. A null crucible, designed not to destroy ships or planets, but to fracture thought, to tear memory into static. A field of erasure, not just of facts, but of identity. It spread through space like a psychic scream, tearing at the lattice of the Weave. And for the first time since its awakening, the Weave shuddered. Humanity responded not with fleets, but with voices. Billions connected across the Weave, projecting memories not outward, but inward, reinforcing the lattice with raw, vulnerable truth. A child's laughter under rain in New Kolkata. The moment a dying soldier forgave his enemy in orbit above Ceres. A mother's scream of joy when her child survived a plague on Europa. Each memory sparked a pulse. Each pulse pushed back the erasure, until the crucible cracked. Not from force, from recognition. And then came the impossible. A Malrashi vessel, flagship of the assault fleet, shut down its engines and broadcast an open signal. What is this pain? Why do we see what we were told never existed? Its crew had been exposed, not to the enemy, to themselves. And they had remembered. It spread like a fire through the rest of the fleet. Resonance bleeding through hulls, echoing across their psychic channels, unraveling centuries of internal suppression. They didn't surrender. They awakened. And the Guardians did not destroy them. They received them. For the Weave had always been open, not to the perfect, but to the willing. Graves stood at the heart of the first integrated memory chamber orbiting Saturn. A construct made not of metal, but of consensus, the physical representation of Weave node unity. Her eyes flicked through layers of memory data, seeing whole timelines of redemption, of revelation. She saw the Malrashi's change, not just strategic, but personal. And then, a new presence entered the chamber. Not physical, projected. A signal from beyond even the Weave. A voice, speaking in harmonics no language could hold. It had no name, only a frequency. It said, "You have undone what we feared could never be undone. We watched you burn your world and bury your shame. We waited to see if you would silence it again. But you listened. So now we must ask, Will you listen for others? Graves didn't hesitate. We already are. In the following cycles, Earth launched ambassador arcs. Not ships of conquest. Ships of witnessing. Each one carried memory strands, open weave cores, and crews trained not in diplomacy, but in reflection. They went to broken civilizations, to paranoid fortress worlds, to dying empires too proud to ask for help, not to fix, to hear. And when they listened long enough, something always happened. The stars got quieter, the guns stopped charging, and a memory entered the weave of a world once too afraid to hope, now finally speaking again. The weave expanded, and in its center, always, unchanged, unyielding, was Earth. Not as a capital, not as a center of control, but as a seed. A reminder that even a fractured species could become something more. That silence, once broken with honesty, could resonate forever. That memory, once shared, could hold up the sky. Not all memories are bright. The weave did not censor. It did not filter or beautify. It accepted joy as readily as grief, and in time, the darker truths of every species began to flow into its endless tapestry. War, betrayal, genocide, self-destruction, and Earth's memories were no exception. It showed the purges, the bombs, the oceans boiling under corporate greed, the skies choked in the name of ambition. It showed children buried under flags, cities turned to ash by lies, and the billions who had died before humanity became ready. Many civilizations recoiled when they touched that history, but others leaned in, because they, too, had blood on their hands. And if humanity could walk through it and still stand tall, not perfect, but present, then maybe, so could they. From the fractured world of Kavron, the shattered remnants of a once proud species reached out. Their sun had long gone unstable, their biosphere degraded, their politics reduced to ash by centuries of civil collapse. But their stories remained. They offered a memory fragment, carefully preserved for thousands of cycles, a lullaby sung to a dying child in the final days of their capital city. It entered the weave, and the Guardians responded, not with ships, with seeds. Terraforming pods left Earth's orbit silently, guided not by command but by resonance vectors. They drifted across the void, carrying gene-encoded hope to the dying soil of Kavron. Within weeks, the first green sprout pushed through gray dust, and the Kavron wept, because no one had saved them. They had saved themselves, by remembering, by sharing, by asking for nothing but to be seen. Earth's role became quieter over time. It no longer needed to speak first. Its presence in the weave was a baseline, the first song in a growing chorus. Graves, now a memory herself, lived on as a resonance profile, a story accessible to all, felt by those approaching similar choices. Her voice no longer gave orders. It simply asked, "What are you afraid to remember?" And that question undid wars before they began. One day, the Guardians ceased their patrols. They gathered in formation over Earth once more, an orbit that shimmered with finality. A great sphere of presence, a flower of silence and anticipation. Then they turned outward, away from Earth, and began to leave. One by one, they entered the void, each carrying with them a complete imprint of human memory and resonance. They weren't abandoning Earth. They were planting it elsewhere. The Guardians had always been more than defense. They were inheritance carriers. Earth had remembered. Now it was time for others to be given that chance. Across galaxies, the weave now pulsed in star systems previously considered lost causes. On gas giants once ruled by warring energy beings, the echoes of calm minds began to take root. In derelict megastructures abandoned by extinct empires, voices once silenced returned in reconstructed resonance. On a rogue planet drifting without a sun, a single campfire burned, lit by a traveler who had found a guardian seed and chosen to stay. Not to conquer, not to preach, to listen. And slowly, that world began to hum. On Earth, the last beacon bloomed. It wasn't a monument. It wasn't a tower. It was a garden. At its center stood a crystalline pool, shimmering with memory. A place where any being, from any world, could step forward and see the full truth of humanity's story. Nothing hidden. No greatness without its shadow. No shadow without the choice to rise again. And those who visited always said the same thing. It didn't show them what Earth was. It showed them what they could be. A new species emerged from the edge of the veil. Young, untouched by war, terrified, but curious. They stumbled across a guardian relic, a weave node still pulsing weakly in orbit around a dead satellite. They touched it, and instantly, they heard a voice. Not a warning, not a command, just a question. Do you remember who you were before you were told who to be? They fell silent for a long time. And then, bravely, they answered, "We want to." The weave welcomed them in. Earth's story lit their sky, and the stars shifted again, not because of power, but because of memory. The universe was no longer a collection of isolated stars. It had become a network of echoes. Across 1,000 systems, the weave hummed, not as infrastructure, but as presence. Not every world had joined. Not every species had chosen to remember. But the path was open now, and once opened, it could never be truly closed. The Guardians had become myth. Not vanished, just transcended. Their black hulls were now relics floating near ancient suns, drift-locked in orbits chosen by resonance rather than physics. Pilgrims visited them, not for guidance, but to listen in silence. And when they returned, they did not speak of what they had heard, only that they had understood. Earth did not lead them anymore. It held the note. In the farthest reaches of the weave, something ancient stirred. Not hostile, not curious, simply waiting. A construct the size of a planetary ring, dormant, buried in dark space. It had no origin. No creator species ever claimed it. The Federation had once labeled it a derelict. But now, as the weave approached, it pulsed once. Once. And within the resonance layer, a phrase emerged. One of ours returned. That ours was unclear, until the weave revealed it. It meant Earth. The Guardians had not been the first. They had been a reply to a call sent out long before Earth had language. Humanity had not been born with a purpose, but its echo had awakened something that remembered them before they even existed. The garden at Earth's final beacon shimmered. A figure stood beneath its starlit arch, a child of a species not yet charted. Beside them, a Terran elder rested on a polished stone bench, hands folded, eyes half closed. They were not speaking aloud, but the weave carried their thoughts like birdsong. The child asked, "Are we good enough?" The elder replied, "We were never meant to be. That was never the point." Then why remember? Because when we remember, we can choose better. The child sat quietly, gaze lifted to the stars. Did it hurt? All of it, the elder said. But that pain, that's what let us see each other. And somewhere, across time, across thought, across the layered lattice of all memory ever woven into the fabric of being, a voice sang. It was not Terran. It was not alien. It was resonance itself. A world once forgot itself. It dug deep enough to find not death, but its own reflection. It remembered its mistakes and became a path for others to do the same. This is not salvation. This is not perfection. This is becoming. And with that final note, Earth became not a place, not even a people, but a story, a beacon, eternal, a memory, chosen, a mirror, open to all. And so it was told that once, in a spiral galaxy forgotten by the great empires of time, there was a species that fell and rose and remembered. And because they chose to carry their own scars, the stars listened.